And our first item of business is that we have someone that's joining us virtually that is a voting member. So Nick, I don't see you, but I see your name.
Yes, ma'am.
There you go. Would you please give us your name, your location, and your reason for virtual attendance?
Yes, ma'am. I'm Nicholas Pilpowski, representing Albemarle County Rural for JAUNT, and I am remote due to family medical today.
Welcome, and I would entertain a motion to accept Nick into the meeting.
So moved.
And that was Mike, I think, so, and then the second by Lynn. Was anyone told them?
Yes. Supervisor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Oshrin. Miss Miller, Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Polosprowski, but I don't know if he votes for himself, probably not. Okay.
Why not?
Why not?
Mr. Pruitt or Supervisor Pruitt.
Aye.
And Director Silsdorf. That's it.
So Christina, we have a problem
Yes,
because we don't have anyone here from the city.
that's correct. I was just gonna call the point of order and say that technically it's not a quorum.
I thought she was.
Yeah, I did too.
So how shall we proceed? Just
I think we should-
proceed and not vote on
Do we have
Right.
it. Yes, we do.
Agenda and
One.
meeting minutes.
Yes, we do. So maybe, someone can text her if they have her cell number to ask if she's gonna join us, or if she's running late. That would be great, that way. And in the meantime, we just voted, so I guess. Well, we won't take any more votes.
Well, I think that's probably technically moved, right?
Yeah,
Like we can't,
that's
we
right.
can't vote to
That's right.
take into the meeting.
We can't.
Until the-
Sorry. Nick. So we just took a vote and we can't convene the meeting officially unless we have someone from the county and the city.
Well, we can convene the meeting. We just don't have an official
Well,
quorum, so we can't take action.
Officially have the meeting.
There you go.
That.
Yeah.
So we'll move on with the agenda, we just won't take any
Yeah.
more votes, and maybe we'll hear from Natalie. Brian was not able to come this afternoon, and he did assure me that Natalie would be here. So maybe she's just running late.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna move past the agenda and we'll move past the minutes. And, Lucinda, do we have anyone from the public who signed up to speak?
Do we have anyone from the public? Gretchen, I thought you were on the phone with somebody.
No, that was MWG.
Oh, okay. If anybody in the room would like to speak, please raise your hand. And then online, you can raise your hand using the online, raise your hand at the bottom of the screen of Zoom.
Takers right now.
No, so there are no public speakers.
All right, the next agenda item is the RTP transition update from Taylor. So Taylor, I'm gonna turn this discussion over to you.
Thank
And then
you.
just one moment, she just said she'll be at any minute. She was parking, so she got caught up on the roadway.
Sorry. Oh, no, that's fine. Good afternoon, everyone. I am just here to give an update about the RTP transition. At your last meeting, you received a staff memo that discussed sort of the formal sunsetting of the RTP in December of this year. And so since then, we have been working in the background to figure out what does that formal process look like and what do we have to go through to actually go through the sunsetting for the Regional Transit Partnership. And so because the RTP bylaws do not actually speak to dissolution, we received input from the county's attorneys, and they indicated that in the absence of that being outlined, we would follow the same process that we followed to set the RTP up. And so that's what we're doing. We have the RTP MOU that was signed by 6 signatories. And so we are drafting an amendment to that MOU for all of the signatories to sign. We also have a letter requesting dissolution that would be sent to all of those governing bodies. That's included in your packet. And then also a draft memorandum of understanding on CARTA for the city, the county, and TJPDC staff for administration, outlining those responsibilities. And so those items are included in your packet. Happy to take any questions about that.
So let's just make sure I understand and everybody understands. We have in our packet. a copy of the letter
Right,
that you referenced, the TJPDC work letter.
Yes.
right.
And then we also have memorandum of understanding.
Right.
And so we're not voting on that today.
No,
No.
the letter, the dissolution letter will go before the TJPDC commission in their meeting the first Thursday of November for them to approve sending that letter out to all of the signatories. So they will sign it at that time. Then we will send out to all the governing bodies the signed copy of the letter along with the addendum to the original MOU, a copy of the original MOU so that it can be referenced.
Okay, all right. And that is pretty much the process.
Right.
Happy to take questions because that is.
Let's
is-
open it up
yeah.
then for questions.
Right.
Now look to the folks. For question. Go ahead, I know you have a question, that's what we talked about.
Well, at the last meeting, there was points, and in the letter, it addresses that while the RTP was formed to help create an authority, that work is done. That there were residual benefits of the coordination, the networking, communication amongst transit providers. And at the last meeting, we brought up, what's gonna become of that? And Mike, I think I can represent, also asked about the rural component that also potentially is getting lost to the shuffle, the RTP disbanding. So I'm wondering what the group thinks of who's gonna own, making sure that those issues don't get lost in the shuffle.
Right.
And Taylor and I talked about this morning, so would you all address what your thought
Right.
process is for this?
Yeah, so we have definitely heard, and we acknowledge the really great value that the RTP has brought over the years to give us that regional forum for discussion and decision-making around transit. And so we have already indicated and we plan for the future of the CARTA agendas to keep a transit agency update on those as just a standing item to make sure we're continuing to hear and have that opportunity for transit agency coordination to continue to happen at those meetings. On the rural side, the PDC has a rural transportation advisory committee that's called RTAC, another acronym. But we also intend to continue bringing transit items to RTAC so that that's not lost on them and so that they're still hearing comprehensive transportation updates and not just talking about other modes, but also hearing about transit at the same time. And so we have thought, we've already asked for a presentation on rural transit funding to come to them soon. We definitely want to keep them up to date on the transit prioritization study as well as the work is going on with that. So we want to make sure that they're also hearing at the same time about transit and they're not missing that part of the discussion.
I would say, Mike, what are your thoughts as far as do you have any?
I don't know a lot about RTAC, so I guess the question is, like, what's the,
Yeah.
who's represented, what's the voting structure, is that
Mhm.
more similar to this, or is it entirely separate
Yeah.
from it? Just to understand what that representation looks like.
And so RTAC has rural jurisdiction staff on it predominantly, and it is an advisory committee. And so their governing board is the TJPDC commission. JAUNT typically, Jason has attended those meetings in the past and he's given some updates for JAUNT as well. They have a similar, roundtable structure that they do at the end of all of their meetings. They've transitioned to quarterly meetings, so they meet 4 times a year.
They also have voting representations from VDOT, Rideshare, and JAUNT. So they are part of the voting structure.
Just a thought though, I think one of the concerns was getting all the providers together to hear updates from the providers at the same time, so that people can bounce off each other. Is that that's part of what the process you all are talking about, just to be clear?
Yes,
the
the
CARTA
CARTA,
meetings.
that's right. The CARTA agenda will still have that standing agenda item for the transit provider roundtable, for them to have that same discussion that they do in the regional transit partnership meetings.
So what that would look like then at the CARTA meetings, there'd be the roundtable reporting out.
Mhm.
And as long as whoever was there from from the providers would be able to participate. I guess like we do now, I mean, that's.
Yeah, I think, and correct me, because we're all in the working group, correct me if I'm wrong, it's actually 2 separate items. One of them is the transit provider update roundtable. The other is the voting member roundtable. So those would be separate,
So they would happen at the same meeting.
of course,
They
of
would be
course.
separate report
Mhm.
outs, but people would hear the information I think they're seeking. Just looking at folks to see.
So
if there are any
the
comments.
providers that are not members of CARTA would be expected or invited to attend and be prepared.
Yeah.
Is that the-
And we've discussed that with all of them to see if they are willing and available to do that.
What is the future cadence of Carla? There's been every other month sequencing because this group and that group were kind of coexisting in this intervening period. Is Carla keeping that cadence, moving to a more frequent or less frequent cadence? I think that's
Mhm.
at least of interest, if not important.
Yeah. So at this point, CARTA would continue to meet every other month until we would get to a point, with the agenda items that it would necessitate going to a monthly cadence. But for right now, we intend to just have every other month.
Probably until we get funding or something like that, right?
Sorry, Natalie.
I said probably until we get funding or something like that, and then.
Well, certainly the workload increases to where every
Right.
other month is not on work.
Mhm.
So, so as long as the providers gave you the designated person to get the email, right? Identify the right person for you all, you'd be sending an email, they would get an invite to the meeting, I'm just trying to make sure, right? But it's important that the providers get you the right designee they would want to come.
And does the CARTA charter require a certain number of meetings a year? Does it say 6 or is it at least 4 or?
No, it says to be determined by the board.
Okay.
So I guess the question is, since this is not in the part of bylaws or in the. Do we need to add this to the bylaws or in some documentation somewhere? My experience is, if it isn't written down, sometimes it falls off. Just because people aren't aware of it or people change and no one knows, and I just wanna make sure that. Doesn't have to be carved into a stone, but I would like it to be somewhere, Christine.
That
Is that
the
possible?
bylaws indicate an agenda item? Is that what you're
Well,
asking? Sorry, make sure it's clear.
I'm concerned that this, after a year or two, as people change, we could lose track of this. I'm not gonna be here, I know who else is not gonna be here eventually. Staff changes, and it would be nice to have that as part of the guiding document somewhere, and I don't know where. I'm
Okay.
asking you.
We can take that back to the working group and noodle on that.
I don't know if it would be appropriate for the bylaws where it might go, but I'd like it to be documented and it's
Sure.
part of the meeting process,
Mhm.
process, to hear from the other providers.
Okay.
And offer that opportunity, is that?
Could it be as simple as writing a staff memo saying what we intend the transit providers to contribute during that portion of the meeting?
Yeah,
Okay,
something like that, then just.
there's something on paper, yeah.
Cause staff changes, we change.
Right.
And if it's not written there, it may just fall off then.
And an
The
agenda
right
template also might be useful for that.
Yeah, yeah. So you take that back, if that works
Will
for
do.
everyone. And I don't think it delays anything significantly for us right now.
Yeah.
So you all can take that back and work your magic and. If that.
Yep,
Okay.
noted. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, any other comments?
Yeah, so just forgive me or indulge me in sort of working sort of the thought experiment about how CARTA fits in with like regional transit decision making. So the authority, it's really strong for fundraising. I think that's clear, but how would the authority sort of fit into this tackling this problem I raised at the policy board meeting yesterday, where we're adding maybe 10,000 six-figure jobs in the north part of Albemarle County? How do we deal with the implication of that. And, oh, also, there's a biomedical research hub happening at UVA. What are the transit implications of that? How would the authority work in sort of tackling that problem? And I'm not saying the RTP is like good at that or anything, but we're setting up this new authority. How do you all think about that?
I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit. I think we're actually stronger on the planning opportunity than the funding opportunity, because we have the funding to do the planning. And we're getting ready to start the credit prioritization study. That's exactly where that discussion needs to happen.
Yeah.
We know that there are a lot of things that weren't necessarily taken into account during the transit vision plan, like new job development up in the north. Those are things that we need to make sure are accounted for in this plan, and we're already starting to move forward with that plan. So
right. So in that setting, then the vision plan is how we tackle that problem, and the transit authority owns the vision plan, essentially.
Yeah, part of is the spot. Well, I guess it's TJPDC technically working for CARTA to do the prioritization.
Right, with
study.
support from TJPDC or consultants, or a combo of all those things.
Right, so we got the study funding from DRPT this past year to start that study.
Yeah, and then so thinking about how that policy making fits in with like the democratic process, then the board of CARTA is the city and the county, and you send problems back to staff to work through those things, to answer whatever questions the board and the council have. And then that's voted internally.
Just to add that, of course, you all are aware that the CARTA board could change over the years as other localities decide they might want to join us or other. So I mean, it's not static, it might evolve.
Yeah, and that's a consideration we need to be thinking about when we're doing that prioritization, is we need to not just be navel gazing and looking at ourselves, but looking for opportunities to connect with our neighbors around us.
And I know many of us hope that it will evolve to having other localities participate.
Right, and if we're not thinking of that, it won't be.
And I think it's also important to add that it's not just the regional vision plan. The prioritization study is really looking at the vision plan in tandem with the transit strategic plan and the transit development plan and the system optimization plan. And really looking at all of those things together to see like what's already in motion. What's the first thing we should be doing as a pipeline opportunity? What should we be preparing for and planning for now that could be feasible in 5 to 10 years?
Right.
So for now, because it doesn't have authority to raise the revenue, it's really the planning body to make sure that there's clear communication between all of the parts, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Can I ask, are we gonna formalize that process? What I mean by that is, we have all these plans, but let's say, prime example, university comes and says they wanna move some of their operations out to a satellite location. We're in discussions right now about potentially extending one of our lines to take advantage of that. How does that fit into this process? Because that's not on anybody's radar. It wasn't on our radar. They just came
And ask for it.
So how do we formalize that?
I think as we're trying to compile all of these improvements from all of these various plans to figure out what's the universe, we're gonna have to take a look at that list of what's in the universe and see if there's anything missing. And if there's something that's come up in the past 6 months that we haven't accounted for in a plan, that would probably be the time that we want to speak up and say, let's consider this along with the range of things that we're already looking.
So can I say it a little differently? In Richmond, we had a process where jurisdictions would come and ask about potentially making augmentations or to service. Is that being contemplated in how we move this whole process for CARTA?
Because Garland asked an interesting question. That was part of what I thought CARTA would be doing, was looking at where the need is and prioritizing the funding to match those needs.
That would be exactly what CARTA should be doing. This very first rendition, should they not be going to the General Assembly in this upcoming session, which may still happen, but at this point it's unclear, If they're not going to the General Assembly, we still need to be putting in place information to bring to the next session that says, here is our priorities, this is what they cost, and this is the type of funding we are anticipating trying to raise in order to meet these implementation
I
projects.
don't disagree with anything you just said. I think that's the bigger, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
bigger umbrella. What happens for the little, one-offs?
And
Where the
Garland's
university
talking
or
about.
someone will come and say, hey, or the county will say, we just got a new development. And we wanna see if we can extend service. How does that play into, because that's not on anybody's radar right now. But I assume we would want a formal process to allow them to come make a pitch to Carla and figure out whether there's funding to do that.
And Garland's getting at what I'm talking about, because we have to have a process.
Sure.
that we can.
I think that process might come after funding is available, because right now
Or
the
in
funding,
anticipation.
or in,
tandem.
right. But right now the funding is through our local government streams, right? So that conversation happens with our local jurisdictions instead of through CARTA. The CARTA conversation is, what are the big priorities right now? What are we gonna use as our example to take to the state so that we can get the funding? Once we have the funding and CARTA becomes the seat of where we go to talk about funding, then those little one-offs don't happen at the local jurisdiction level. They happen with CARTA and then the local jurisdiction to make sure we're aligned on everything.
So right now, you're just contemplating the same process where the university would just still reach out to the county or to the city about making an enhancement.
Right.
Well, because for the short term, right now, CARTA doesn't have any authority or any funding to be able to receive requests.
But yes, but I thought part of Carter's.
I think we'll get to
maturation
what you're
process
talking about.
was they were supposed to start assuming part of that role and making recommendations to the jurisdiction. Is that not what we contemplate?
I think that's what we're getting to, but I don't think
Through the
we're.
prioritization study, is that what you're asking?
I mean, it could be through the prioritization study, but it also could be just literally. Are we signaling to the region that CARTA is the mechanism by which you make contact first? Or is CARTA second? Meaning, do they reach out to
That's
CARTA
a really good question.
for requests, and then we have a conversation with the jurisdictions?
It's a
Or
really
is
good
it through
question.
the jurisdictions and then they reach back out to CARTA? That's what I'm asking.
And it may change.
Mhm.
For right now, it's the jurisdictions, but
It has
as
to.
CARTA goes forward and establishes a funding stream, and then it becomes CARTA that you go with. Is that correct? That's my understanding.
I would think that naturally would be the way it would work, but I would imagine if CARTA wanted to say, this is how we're making decisions, we're only doing it together. You can make that
Yeah.
decision. It would be a little bit difficult to enforce with,
Yeah.
your separate boards and your separate staffs, figuring out how that works, but you could. But that might take some more legwork on our part to figure out how that works.
Doesn't that not only work if CARTA controls more than whatever the new tax money is, right? Like, you have to
We
understand,
don't
right? Like,
Yeah.
if it had still a city department, there's a part of it where you're still coming to the city and John, vice versa.
Yeah,
I just want to be practical, like, not that I'm saying shortcoming in a terrible way, one of the shortcomings about this intermediate phase is like the regionalism is really only focused on the city and county. We do have plans from John and other folks that will look at those other jurisdictions. But when it comes to prioritizing, right? Does routes that I want in Louisa County match up against, Charlottesville and Albemarle when the only voting partners are Charlottesville and Albemarle?
yeah.
Really? Right? We just have to be honest about that. And so I think one of the big things I'd like to see on the CARTA work plan, as a transit provider is like, what are the really targeted efforts to bring in more localities, to, what is the value proposition to Fluvanna County? And is it sophisticated, in a way where you could make that pitch? I'm not sure it is, but I think it ought to be a major point of emphasis right now.
Mike makes a good point.
But I thought some of those conversations already happened.
Several have across time, those conversations, we need to continue to keep happening with those local jurisdictions. And frankly, I think CARTA is gonna need to find some success before we are able to convince some of them to come along.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that, but I thought part of the discussion was. We were setting up CARTA to show the successes.
Yes,
To entice them to come.
yes.
But because they're not there now, it's not like you're putting it on the back burner, but they have chosen not to be a part of it right now. Right, so I get where we don't wanna necessarily just shut the door on them. But they had an opportunity, I mean, nobody's asking for any money or anything right now, all you're asking to do is to participate at this point in time, and they chose not to do so. Am I missing something?
No, that's
No,
not.
no, and I think
Yeah.
through the planning work, we should be able to illuminate, hey, it is of interest to the city and the county and Louisa to have a commuter route that is going in both directions. And in order to fund something like that, we would like to encourage you guys to be a part of this authority to support that interregional connection. Like, I think all of that is where we should be and want to be going. I don't know that we are there yet.
So is that Mike's pitch? I'm not gonna speak to Mike, but is that Mike pitching to Louisa that we put this new route in 3 years or 4 years from now, it becomes a part of the funding structure? If they become a part of the board, I mean, they become a part of the card structure?
Route exists already, right? It's just that it's insufficient.
Right, I'm saying.
Right.
enhancement, maybe
Greater
it's
frequency,
much
more days.
But you're asking who makes the pitch and
Yeah,
who,
who makes the
yeah,
pitch.
so is that Arda or is that?
Well, unless Louisa joins Carla, it's just me
Yeah.
going to Louisa and, and that's part of like, when you think about the whole picture, right, 50,000 or so of the rides are us at JAUNT moving people from a lot of Albemarle, but also from Louisa, Nelson, Buckingham, etc., Green, into the city, and really a lot of them straight to UVA, right? In fact, I just did the numbers the other day for Scotland people, 61,000 trips either start or end at UVA.
Wow.
Out of 250,000, so.
I would think if CARTA is saying through our prioritization study that we would want to go out to one of these rural outlying counties, it wouldn't just be Mike going and talking to them.
Right.
Because it would also be CARTA saying, this is our priority as CARTA. We want to have this conversation. Is this okay with you for us to include it as a priority? They may come back and say, no, we don't want that. If that's the case, why would we include that as a priority for us?
That's right. So we're in baby steps right now.
We're just starting off that study, so yeah.
But I think all of these discussions are really good because they inform your all's work.
Yeah.
And you know how to reach out to these folks as
Oh,
you're
yeah.
having the work.
Oh, yeah, we have a standing monthly working meeting with the transit providers
Okay,
related to CARTA.
Right.
So we're doing this on a monthly basis.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That makes me feel better.
And I really appreciate, we don't have all the answers, like, let's be transparent.
Right.
I appreciate this discussion because this is building it from the bottom up and it's
Yeah.
shaping, what does this region need and how do we use CARTA to get there? So this is exactly where we are grappling as the working group and the transit provider group in the background, is what is this gonna look like now in the short term when we don't have like revenue authority, we don't have the authority to have Cat do a route or to tell JAUNT or to tell Louisa or ask, I guess is a better word than tell. Like the CARTA board does not have that authority at this time. We need to build that by doing things like securing permanent revenue so that we can then say, okay, now we have the funding. This is a priority of the CARTA board. Where does this fit into your transit strategic plan? Where does this fit into your pipeline in order to be able to implement these things that are priorities if we can bring the funding?
And we've said all along that we need some successes, whatever that low hanging fruit might be. And then we're hopeful that the Louisas will come and as we go through this process. Yeah. Is that helpful at all?
It is. I have a question related, and I'm sorry if this is in the bylaws, and I don't remember them a couple months ago. Is there a non-voting member? Possibly, that's what I thought. So how does CARTA envision also, I'm glad to hear how the transit provider involved other stakeholders other than direct providers. I mean, is there open comment like riders or other stakeholders that come and speak that like they do here? Are there roles for the Charlottesville Alliance has appreciated being a non-voting member here? Hopefully we brought some value. We've certainly got some value of bringing information back to the table and thinking about transportation and what's going on and how we can hopefully be an asset for the community to build better transit as well as walkability and other things. But there is a concern that is also going to be lost in the shuffle potentially if CARTA doesn't have a role there, because there is a gap in advisory in transit. I mean, I'm part of CTAC too, and we're struggling with the MPO policy board of what are we advising on and are we bringing any value to the table? It doesn't frankly feel much right now like CTAC is, and I don't get a sense from the policy board that we're bringing much value. So there's a gap in advisory of other stakeholders beyond transit providers like that. How is that going to be addressed in CARTA, if at all? And if not in CARTA, who owns trying to make sure those voices don't get lost in the shuffle?
And I have heard the same concerns from CTAC members. I don't know if the CARTA is an opportunity to utilize CTAC better. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there, and it may not be.
Yeah, CTAC advises the MPO policy board.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that it doesn't have to, that doesn't have to happen all. I mean, I'm saying there are other ways to look at this.
And one,
Things can change.
I think a good opportunity would be the planning instruments that you're developing, right? Like, so definitely, have somebody from the, Public Housing Association residents on the steering committee of, the prioritization plan, and like make sure that there's, because one of the reasons cited for getting rid of CTAC is, well, we didn't have robust public processes back then, and now we do, and everything's good. I think the 80s might beg to differ on that assertion, but make sure that there are good opportunities for input when the actual sausage is being made is kind of almost more important than in the meetings.
Okay, so I'm gonna, if there are any other comments or questions, because you all heard our discussions.
Got a lot to work
Yeah.
on.
Well, it's a lot of work to be done. That's exactly what I need to bring us back though, because we now have an official forum now that Natalie has tried. And I want to make sure that, so let's start over again, because we do have our forum. And I would like to invite Nick to join us. So Nick, can you join us again?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
There you go. So I'm sorry, but I'm gonna ask you to say again where you are and your name and your reason for virtual.
Yes, ma'am. Nicholas Pilpowski representing rural JAUNT, and I'm home with sick family.
Okay, now I would entertain a motion to approve Nick to join the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and you want to call the roll for that?
Supervisor McHale.
Yes.
Counselor Ostrom.
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Director Parker.
Yes.
No Brian, right? Supervisor Pruitt
Aye.
and Director Silsdorf.
Yes.
Okay, all right, and we've had several people that came in since we sat around the table a few minutes ago, so let's go on and do our introductions like we normally do. And Garland, I'm looking at you to my left.
Garland Cat.
Jamie Gelder, ACPS.
Peter Thompson, Charles Flaherty Alliance.
Mike Murphy Jones.
Katie Miller, TRPT.
Alan Saunders, DRPT. Scott Silsdorf, UTS.
County McKeel, Albemarle County Board of Supervisors.
Randy Parker, JAUNT.
Mike Pruitt, County Board.
Natalie Oshrin, Charlottesville City Council.
Peter Krebs, Piedmont Environmental Council.
Ben Chambers, City of Charlottesville.
Christine Jacobs, Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission.
Taylor Jenkins, Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission.
Lucinda Shannon, Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission.
Gretchen Thomas, DJ. And we'll just go the back row, just.
So you're not for transit planner, city.
Jared Space, Deputy City Manager, Charlottesville.
Jen Fleischer, Blue Ridge Health District. Tanya Schwarzenegger, Albemarle County.
Cameron Jacobs, Charlottesville area transport.
Eagle Padina, DJPs.
Okay, all right. And I appreciate your patience that we repeated a couple of these steps, but we do have, I need now to approve the official agenda. So is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Mike, made a motion,
Second.
second by Randy. Would you please call for the approval of the agenda?
Yes, Supervisor McHale,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrom.
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Director Parker,
Yes.
Director Pilipowski,
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt,
Aye.
Director Silsdorf.
Yes.
All right. The next item is approval of the draft meeting minutes from August the 28th. Were there any comments, anyone that had anything they wanted to point out on the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mike and Natalie, would you call for the vote?
Supervisor McKeel.
Yes.
Counselor Oshrin,
Yes.
Miss Miller,
Yes.
Director Parker,
We're gonna abstain since I'm not here.
Director Pilipowski,
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt,
Aye.
and Director Silsdorf.
Yes.
Okay. And we have had our discussion about the RTP transition update. So we'll move on now to the DRPT bus update by Alan Saunders. And I think Alan has a presentation.
Thank you.
So I'm looking at the screen. I think they're pulling it up. There you go.
Supervisor McKeel, would you rather I sit down or go stand up for the?
I think they like it because that puts
That's what
a
I'll do.
microphone
Okay.
and I think it's better for the transcription of the minutes. And we really appreciate you being here today, Alan.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to come.
Thanks, Alan. Good
It's
to see you.
everybody. Yeah. All right, any special instructions?
No.
Break this, the engineer, okay.
Yep.
Great, perfect. Good. Well, good afternoon. I am Alan Saunders, Engineering Director for the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And I did have a goal. I always like whenever we have the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Department of Rail and Public Transportation because there's a great deal that that little agency does beyond just bus stops and construction projects. So part of it, I'm going to selfishly read from the script so I don't miss anything. But I do want to take time. I've got this slide, another slide, just go over DRPT a little bit. Our mission is pretty simple. We're here to connect Virginians and improve the quality of life through smart and innovative transportation solutions. It is more than just moving people from point A to B. It really is how we access safe, reliable, and convenient transportation. The vision really guides us in a lot of what we do. It's easy to fall astray with a little agency. There's 70 of us, and there are a lot of opportunities for things that we can do to help. And our vision realigns us back to truly a connected Virginia. And bus stops play a huge role in that. We're here to promote transit. We want to get people out of the mud, out of the rain, give them a safe place to wait for their transit vehicle. And bus stops are their first point of transit system. So we really do play into that. Put a lot of focus on it. DRPT. General Assembly created DRPT in 1992 as an independent agency separate from VDOT. DRPT serves as the lead agency for public transportation, freight rail, which we also play a big role in, and commuter services for Virginia, which is another element that when I get into the next slide, I hate to miss it, but Katie knows much more about that than the engineering side where we just focus on construction projects. Beyond funding, we provide leadership, a lot of technical assistance on the engineering side, strategic guidance, especially for funding, aiming to maximize the return on investment of the public dollars. And we do promote transportation, and freight is also a big element of what we do. First, funding transportation services for older adults, people with disabilities, and those with lower incomes, that is priority. And we've got a great team that focuses on that. These programs are often lifelines, as many of you know, connecting them to the services they need. The programs like van pools, car pools, employer-based transportation groups. And when I was at VDOT, I was on a van, had no idea that came from DRPT. So there were a lot of things that I've learned since I've come to this little agency 3 years ago. We're deeply involved in freight rail in Virginia, and outside of transit, thankfully, that is a role that I get to play. We have several programs that fund improvements around the state, but getting trucks off of the roadways and onto trains, improving train facilities. There are 9 short line railroads in Virginia, 2 class 1s, and we provide support through all of them. So the engineering team is small. DRPT is just 70 people. So the engineering team, there are 3.5 of us. And really, I am the least among them, thankfully. Bethel Kefialo, when I moved from VDOT to DRPT, it was a package deal. And I told at the time, Jennifer DeBrule, the director, that I couldn't do anything without Bethel coming with me. She's a UVA engineer. She's really super. She's up in Nova. and handles a lot of the larger projects in Nova, playing an oversight role. She's also our electric vehicle, battery electric bus charging solution expert. We turn to her for that. And then transit stops. Bethel has played a really heavy role in developing guidance in every bus stop project that we have across the state, and there are a bunch of them. We make sure that we include her because her perspective is very different than mine, and she's a really great engineer. Jacob Pottinger, also from VDOT. He's a planner, has a lot of rail experience, but he has quickly adapted to the transit side and is really involved, has a lot of projects, small projects around the state. Jamie Motley retired from DRPT and thankfully agreed to come back. A lot of our project data lives in accounting systems and other things, and Jamie is really super at identifying funding solutions, how funding is distributed across projects, how we spend it, and if there is a need there, planning for a construction project or a bus stop and how it gets paid for. So transit stops. There are about 15,000 transit stops around the state, and that number, every one of them is different. And we have really been focused on, in the design that we do, we cover a broad spectrum of construction types of projects. And I always try to remind myself to say construction project because at the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, buying a bus is a project. It has a scope, schedule, and budget. Just about everything that we do is a project. The engineering team supports the construction projects, and that can be everything from a $50,000 bus stop up to a $400 million metro station. So we cover a really broad spectrum of project types. On the rail side, excuse me, on the rail side, we've got rail yards that we're providing as part of Rail Industrial Access Program, ways to improve passenger rail and the state of good repair rail in Virginia, and also even projects in tunnels and other things. So we really have a broad spectrum of projects that we cover. But of all of them, working on the bus stops has been the most rewarding. And we make it a point, we get out, we all use transit, we sit at the bus stop with these riders and see what their needs are, especially if they have a mobility need. And that's really tough to replicate. As an engineer, we spend a lot of time in manuals with design criteria. Designing a bus stop is incredibly complex. Traffic engineering, roadway design, there's lighting design, there's pedestrian access. Every single bus stop is unique. And we really have to approach every single one of them that way. What is the mobility need? What is the transit vehicle that's going to access this? What is the site distance like? What is it close to? Is it a commercial entrance? What kind of site triangles are around it? How is the rider going to get to this stop safely at 11 o'clock at night when they get off shift? Where are the lights and what does it look like? So every single stop, we approach it as a unique project. And there are a lot of elements. It's incredibly complex in designing a bus stop. And that's something that I've also thankfully been exposed to since coming to DRPT. At VDOT, I spent a career working on a lot of big projects and then working in a residency. And a bus stop is an incredibly complex little project. It requires a lot of thought, but it's very rewarding when you see somebody step from that project onto a bus. It is incredibly rewarding. So I'm very thankful for that part of what we do. Now, I'm going to start off and then I'm going to pass the torch. Thankfully, Bethel Kepyalo is with us today, our engineer who's up in Nova calling in. DRPT has two offices, one in Richmond and one in Alexandria, and Bethel works, thankfully, in our Alexandria office. And one of the things we did want to talk about today is really, in addition to some of the design and getting some feedback from you and addressing any questions, or to highlight some of the technical requirements that go into the design of a bus stop. Sometimes I feel like we are the messenger that, especially when we're talking about ADA and some of the requirements and even moving stops as a necessity, because where you have your bus stop now is just not a good fit. It may have been a good fit 30 years ago when it was established there, but if it needs to be improved, according to ADA, it has to be improved to be compliant. You can't approve a piece of it. It's either compliant or it's not. So a lot of our focus is ADA. But I did want to tap on the streamlined process and the improvements that we've made since the Department of Rail and Public Transportation really dove in. Thankfully, Supervisor McKeel, you were the first step in that. So last year, and it took 2 years to achieve this, but the General Assembly enacted legislation introduced by Delegate Dolores McQuinn. And I want to make sure I say that correctly. She just did a great job pushing, promoting transit, promoting the need for improving transit stops, and how cumbersome the multi-year approval process could be. So she did a great job promoting within the General Assembly legislation that significantly streamlined the approval process for bus stops, especially on Commonwealth property and VDOT right away. The Department of Rail and Public Transportation And VDOT drafted a new land use permit that's required for making any improvement on the right of way. The land use permit STS. And that is small transit shelter land use permit. A lot of the requirements that we focus on are really driven by the American with Disabilities Act. The design criteria, the roadway design criteria, how the vehicle accesses the stop, the traffic engineering design that goes into a stop, all of that is really driven by the safety requirements and the access requirements that are required by the American with Disabilities Act. And that was enacted in 1990. And it really, especially for public services, public accommodations, transportation, and telecommunications, ADA is the first step, and it drives the design criteria that we use when we're evaluating an individual stop. What are the requirements, and how can someone get to it safely? There is another acronym, PROAG, and I'm going to get to a point to pass the torch to Bethel. PROAG, the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines. They're the mechanical interpretations of ADA. ADA requires a certain access. PROAG provides the technical requirements that describe if a technical warning service is required, what the percentage is of slope in getting to a stop, what the accessible paths to get to the stop need to look like. If there's a shelter there, what the shelter pad looks like, how you access the shelter from the bus stop, how the rider accesses the boarding and lighting area or accesses the vehicle. PROAG defines all of that for us. So we mention that acronym a lot. And I do want to just reinforce, when it comes to ADA, if you touch a bus stop, you have to improve it, has to be compliant. It's not just making sure the boarding and lighting area is 5 foot by 8 foot deep. It has to be accessible in every way. It has to be connected to another network. The way the platform is designed, the way the ramps are designed, and certainly Garland, we had to stop Belmont Park. You can see very quickly how it transformed from a small stop into a big project to make that compliant. Every single stop is unique and it's very expensive. So Bethel, I'm going to stop for a minute, take a breath, and let me pass the torch over to you for this slide.
All right, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Beth.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, like Alan said, we've had a lot of movement that's happened in the last couple of years. And so I'm excited to share with you some of the updates that we've had from recent months. And he shared about the land use permit application that was developed in collaboration with VDOT for small transit shelters. It's a big win for us because VDOT already has a long list of land use permits that they use for the variety of activities that happen commonly within their right of way. And it denotes like what the specific requirements are for that activity, what VDOT needs in order to complete their review. And so this is really beneficial because it eliminates confusion for VDOT, it eliminates confusion for the transit agency, and it standardizes that process across the state so that anyone who needs to install a bus stop or improve a bus stop knows what process they need to go through for those stops, at least that are on VDOT right of way. Another thing that we have been working on since the beginning of the year that is intended to support our transit agencies is the development of transit stop design guidelines. This is to support really any decision that you need to make related to a bus stop, such as where to place the bus stop along the road, what amenities to consider, how to improve safety. It also provides guidance to the readers on like how the process differs for bus stops that are on state right of way versus other public right of way or private right of way. And in developing this, we referenced not only like other states' design guidelines and national best practices, like, Alan mentioned PROAG, and then we have NACDO. Like there's so many guidance documents out there specifically for bus stops. But in the past, they haven't really been just reviewed heavily because there's been a dependence on the VDOT roadway manual, which is great, but there's so much more guidance out there that is helpful for all of the different conditions that are applicable within the state. And so we have included all of those national best practices. And then also references from guidelines within the state. Like Arlington has a bus stop design guideline, WMATA does too. And so we've ensured that this is going to encompass and reflect all of the different conditions that are within Virginia. And so we're excited to release that. It's supposed to be out on our website in November, and we've reviewed this with our stakeholders across the state. There are so many there are so many transit agencies that have informed us on the struggles that they've had, the different conditions that they've had to deal with as far as improving their bus stops. And so their feedback has been really essential into developing this document. So we're really excited to get that out there. And kind of at the bottom of the slide, one thing that we're also working on is developing a GIS tool that identifies not just the stops that exist within the state, but also their conditions and what needs to be improved. We grant a lot of funds every year for new bus stops and like the improvements at bus stops, but haven't had a great way to catalog these. So we've been developing a tool that the transit agencies can use to catalog and rate their bus stops, to give us an opportunity to determine what the best way is to support them with funding and with our other resources. And so this is something that we are looking forward to continuing to develop and then roll out so that we can, just continue to support the efforts that all of the transit agencies are making.
But Ellen, do you want us to take questions now or just wait? I don't know.
I'm almost done.
It's almost, yes.
We are, but I'll take questions from you whenever.
Well, I mean, I was just wondering. It looks like you're almost done, then we'll
Yes,
open it up for questions.
Okay, great. All right, and Bethel, thank you. Great job. I had a phone friend on that one. She's always good when I go around presentations to make sure we close all the gaps. And her perspective on every single project, she has a lot of really wonderful solutions. And it's one of the things I want to get to. When we go from an urban stop in Fairfax to a flat stop in Hampton Roads to an urban stop in Richmond to more of a metropolitan stop in Chesterfield County to an urbanish stop in the city of Charlottesville, creeping outside of the city limits to southwestern Virginia to Marion, through Roanoke, Harrisonburg. Every single project's different. The relief is different. How the vehicle accesses the stop, even making sure that there's sufficient sight distance. So when the vehicle comes to a stop at a bus stop, it's not rear-ended, the operator's sake. That passengers can get on and off, and then where are they going to go? Every single stop's different. Every single bus stop requires, if there's an ADA improvement, that requires signed and sealed construction drawings. And it doesn't matter if it's for the city of Charlottesville, or if it's for Farmville, or if it's for radar down in Roanoke. If you touch it and you make an ADA improvement, that requires a survey, requires a design, and a licensed professional engineer has to sign it and seal it. It's required by the Code of Virginia that if you touch it and make a public works improvement, regardless of who's going to approve it, you have to have a PE review it, interpret the ADA requirements, and all of the other roadway design, track engineering, and design and prove it. And you have to think forward to make sure that the funding for every single stop includes that planning process. And Bethel is certainly super at it. And we encourage every single transit agency, 40 of them across the state, and into addition to the other human service providers, that if you're going to have a stop, you're going to touch it. There may be certain instances where leaving that pole behind the curb is the best thing you can do. It might be your only option. Your other option may be to move the stop, to consider where your ridership is. Has it changed over the last 30 years? Why do you have that stop there to begin with? Just because you always have. What does this stop need to do? What is your goals for that stop? That's where we like to start. And then from there, we begin to map out what the design may look like, what the impediments and the constraints are of every single site. Is it close to a commercial entrance? And then you have to have a sight triangle open so that anyone coming into and out of that parking lot can see safely, not run over somebody or not look through a bus shelter to oncoming traffic. Then once it's designed, it does have an approval process, and that's very different, depends on where you are. If the adjoining road is on VDOT's right of way and you include a bus shelter at your stop, that has to be included in a package that goes to the Commonwealth Art and Architecture Review Board for their approval downtown. And that's a step that just needs to occur. If it has federal aid on that bus stop, bus stops are $150,000, and that's for a relatively simple one. If it includes a shelter and it has federal aid on it, it has to go through NEPA. And that is a step that we help resource, but it's something that you need to consider as a locality when you're planning. You need somebody to resource that for you, you have to pay for it, and it takes time. So when we do have a bus stop, one of the things that we encourage everyone to do is to call Bethel first, call me first, and get us involved. Call one of the planners at DRPT, call Miss Miller, and get us engaged early, and we will help you through the planning process. We know what resources we can bring to bear, or at least the programs that are available to give you the revenue necessary to build your stops correctly. And it might be a feasibility study first to identify what kind of projects are you going to have? Where are the stop locations? Where do they need to be? Who are you going to serve at these stops? What are your mobility needs at them? And then this stop is viable, this stop is viable. This one is going to be a $250,000 stop. The traffic is very heavy. The clear zone off of the roadway, because of the roadway design speed, needs to be 25 feet. So you have to have a bus pull off to get your vehicle, your transit vehicle out of the way. It's going to be an expensive stop. DRPT has programs to help pay for that, but it's something that you need to consider. Apply for that funding, get the help, do the design, get the approvals, then come back in for funding if you're going to use DRPT as a revenue stream, and then plan for ways to build that. And it requires professional services. It's hard, not necessarily for the city of Charlottesville, but for a small locality like Blackstone, to have a resource to go through a professional services procurement to engage an engineer on a $50,000 bus stop with a $15,000 fee. You're just not going to have a lot of engineers to do that. The Department of General Services actually has a contract, the Virginia Department of General Services, DGS, that has a group of professional services contracted that just require a PO and EVA to engage their services on projects. And DRPT will develop the cost estimates for you. We'll gauge the viability. We'll help you look for solutions. We'll, using Ms. Miller, try to come up with a funding strategy for your projects. I'll help you, Bethel will help you with cost estimates in your application that you'll throw back over the fence to us and fund and build your bus stops and get these people out of the mud. But one of the things I really do want to impress upon you is that they are very complex projects and they require a lot of thought. I know, Zoe, you're involved with some of them now that we've been looking at the southern end of the county. And what can we do in the short term? And what can we do long-term to provide access to transit for these folks? It's the first point where they get on that vehicle, and it needs to be the best, but it does require a lot of thought, and every one of them is complex. So with that, wide open to any questions.
I'll open it up for questions.
I don't have a question, but I have a public thank you. I live on this team that done wonders to help move our process along. And what he mentioned about our Belmont stop, we thought that stop was gonna be about $45,000, $50,000. That stop turned out to be $200,000+ when it all said and done. So that was, it was just the magnitude of what happened. The slope was much more severe than we thought it was. We had to move utilities, so it just started ratcheting up and up. It took 2 years to get that stop in place. And that's just telling you, that's just one stop, right? So the complexity of every single stop we have, the grade is really important for us to kind of figure out. And that's been some of our challenges here in Charlottesville. We have a lot of hills. And we really don't have, we have tight spaces. And sometimes we may have to move utilities because we know there's utilities there and we have to move them, then that ratchets up the costs. It goes from a $50,000 to $75,000 stop to a couple $100,000 stop pretty quickly.
But thank you for the kudos.
I'm just saying, and without their funding, none of this is possible. We'd be having the existing stops the way they are right now.
That was a great stop, and it was fun to be included throughout the project development and delivery process for that stop. And we have several more within the city too, and they've been challenging. What we don't want to see, and what we have seen, is for a small locality to come into DRPT and to get funded, and then go out and make an improvement to a stop that is not ADA compliant, that isn't accessible to someone with a mobility need, genuine. You take a step back and look at that, and if somebody has a genuine mobility need, whether it's sight impaired or whether I can imagine some of these stops trying to get a wheelchair to, and they're done. So now we have to start over. And they've already spent their money. we've reimbursed them for this, or we have to pull that back, or we can't reimburse them because it's not ADA compliant. We don't want to be in that position. We would much rather be involved upfront and supporting you and coming up with a solution that meets your needs. And then making sure you've got the resources to design it, know what the design requirements are. If it's a VDOT right-of-way project, we'll help facilitate. Bethel and I worked in a VDOT residency nearby for years, and we can help facilitate the land use approval process for that. But knowing that it's required upfront, managing expectations with that, both in cost and time, and the resources that are required, that's the critical. But that was a great stop.
So I do have some questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a quick
Yeah.
one, that's just a follow-up on something you just said, which if you don't mind, which is, you said if it's not reimbursable because it's not ADA compliant, what's the scenario where they would be doing something but not making it ADA compliant?
Not knowing what ADA requires or the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines would require, whether it's a slope to access a boarding and a lighting area. In addition to the stop itself, you have to have a 5-foot by 8-foot deep boarding and a lighting area that's open. And there's some instances where the county's right-of-way may end at the back of the sidewalk, even if they have a little grass utility strip that would get them to 5 feet. A lot of places where they don't have 8 feet of right-of-way. And you can make some minor improvements on the back end of that 8-foot, but you have to have an 8-foot by 5-foot boarding and a lighting area. It can't have more than a 1/2-inch lip at
So-
less than 2%. So it's like all those
If there's
requirements.
that space requirement, they could still do something to it, but
It's not compliant.
right, but it wouldn't be compliant, so it wouldn't be reimbursable, but you still could do something to it, like.
If you do, well, there's two things. You don't want to do something that's not mobile, that's not accessible, where you have someone with a mobility need and you've got a 1/2 inch and try to get over that in a wheelchair and you're not feeling well. You don't want to do that to a rider. The second part is it exposes you to a lot of liability. If you have someone that trips and you've made an improvement to a stop and it's not ADA compliant.
Just a lawsuit.
Right.
Once we touch it, we have to make it compliant or we shouldn't touch it at all.
Right,
Fully
so the
compliant.
scenario where it wouldn't be reimbursable, is someone deciding not to do that for whatever
Well,
reason.
we would probably make the decision with their consultation about, we don't have enough space to make it ADA compliant, so we would just leave it alone.
So you leave the pole in the ground.
Yeah, or then figure out where we could move it to make it compliant. That's the second step, but that
Okay.
existing step where it is, we would leave it alone and then figure out where we could move it to a new step.
Yes, that's what we would do, but I'm just wondering if that scenario comes up often enough to mention that someone's doing something, but they're not making it ADA compliant, so they wouldn't get their reimbursement.
There have been localities and transit agencies with the best of intentions to improve stops and get their riders up out of the mud, have made improvements to bus stops that are not compliant.
They're
And I-
better than what was before, but not all the way better, yeah.
And if they've done that, if they've done it in a vacuum, and Bethel and I are not the ADA police, I'm much more concerned about a mobility need and that a rider can access a stop safely. And that they have a safe place to wait and they can easily get onto and off of the vehicle if they have a mobility need, that the operator can see them well, that the operator is safe when they approach the stop. Those are some of the things that I'm more concerned about. But you do have to know that if you improve it, according to the law, has to be ADA compliant. And you need to make sure it's mobile, but you also really put yourself in a position of liability if it's not.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to ADA. There's a lot to ProWay. VDOT's road design manual and its appendices have a lot of great requirements. AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, and then NACTO with the cities there. You guys know those acronyms really well. They all provide a lot of requirements, but for me, it's important that your riders can safely access that stop if they have a mobility need. That's the important thing. If you put yourself in a position of liability, and you're not going to find an engineer who will sign and seal a set of drawings if your locality requires that. If VDOT's going to require it, any stop on VDOT right away has to have sign and seal drawings if you're going to make an improvement at a bus stop. And you're not going to find a licensed professional engineer who's going to design something that's not compliant.
So there's not the scenario where, okay, let's add a light here, but then that would require making the whole thing ADA accessible, so we're not gonna do it, and they're not gonna get a light, and it's gonna stay the way it is.
A light is not an ADA improvement. So if you're using that.
So, yeah, what is
specifically,
improvement? I guess.
And any improvement would be an accessibility element.
Got, okay,
Would-
so not just, so like a shelter is not necessarily an accessibility,
It is.
or it is?
Absolutely.
Okay, because it's
Yeah.
not, it's adding comfort, but not mobility.
It has impact
Accessibility.
on the access
Yeah,
because you're
access.
putting it next to the bus stop. So you gotta make sure that it is
Yeah,
situated so that
if
it's.
there's enough room,
Yep.
yeah, okay. But like a light is not a mobility thing, but it's an okay,
It's one of the few.
okay, that's,
It's one of the few.
Okay.
Unless you're putting the light pole that will sidewalk. in
Yeah.
which case
Yeah.
that's-
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the problem.
There's instances where a bus stop may have a drainage issue. So and you don't want ice or debris around the bus stop or around the seating area, so you can make some drainage improvements. That wouldn't necessarily have an accessibility impact to access to the stop, and you wouldn't have to improve the stop that way. But if you do make any improvement that includes a bench has to be accessible.
Right.
And now you've got a 5x8 boarding and lighting area. If you do want to add a shelter, shelter is an obstruction to the traveling public, and it can't be within the roadway clear zone, so typically you have to move them back.
Yep.
And when you
So
do that,
that's why it's
be
easy to
accessible.
get from a tire turn sideways with the pole in it to a bench.
Hit it, right.
Cause adding the
Makes sense.
bench involves everything else.
It's a good point, and ADA drives, that's why I wanted to start with that. It really drives from an accessibility perspective, just about everything we do at a bus stop.
Got it, okay, that's helpful, thank you.
So I just have a general question, Ellen, because I know across the United States, in the 50 states, the different dots do different things. They don't all do follow the same. So my question is, is the Virginia dot following, are all these requirements, are the same requirements in other states? And it's just a question, because I know for a fact, because of my experience with VDOT, I know for a fact that dots across the United States do different things. So my question is, are these requirements that Virginia dot is requiring for these shelters and ADA accessible, are those followed by all 50 states, or is there a variety?
The easy answer is yes. Those requirements are not state specific, but VDOT has some self-inflicted.
Just a quick question, so you can answer my question.
Right.
Because I don't want to.
It is at state level.
I've been working on this, trying to get a shelter in Albemarle County now for 8-9 years.
Right.
And we have yet to get one, except on private property.
Hmm.
So my question to you is, and I get Charlottesville needs shelters too, but we have none.
Right.
And my question is, will we be able to get a shelter before I'm pushing up daisies? Because this, to me, I'm sorry,
We'll pick
but I
one,
have
we'll get it
people
done.
standing in the rain,
Yeah.
in the mud, in bad weather. And I get all the rules and regulations, but this went through the General Assembly, 3 years ago?
It did.
And it was very contentious, and the Department of whatever that Department of Services is, blocked. General
Right.
Services blocked everything we were trying to do. It finally went to the governor, he made changes to the bill, and at some point, I remember that if we didn't get the process going within 3 years, we were gonna lose the whole process. And
Right.
what I'm hearing from you is, there's no way we can do that in 3 years.
You can do
Help me
it.
out here, Alan.
You can do it if you have money.
It's my frustration.
I do.
Because I'm standing in the mud,
Yeah.
standing in the rain, standing at bus stops in 110-degree heat. And something has to be done.
We are thankful for your energy, which they, we do.
Garland is laughing because
Yeah.
Garland has heard this from me now, but help me with this. Are we gonna ever be able to get a bus stop?
You will, and we'll make sure it's before you're pushing up daisies. We have to pick a good stop. We'll make sure.
Me with what the General Assembly passed, we have to get this process shown that it is working in Albemarle County or it stops and we lose the funding. So help me understand that, because I don't think we can get this done in 3 years.
So can I hear just 1 second? I
Yeah.
would say Zoe and Tanya are already working on that. They're working through your process, Albemarle's process. They're close. And I've so from the.
And it's been 2 years, Garland,
It has been 2 years.
and we're talking 3 years,
It's been 2 years.
and we won't be able to do it at all.
You're closer now than you have ever been. I think you are probably a good 6 months away from getting you stops in Albemarle County. I'm
Yes.
I would say so.
Yes.
Gretchen, would you make a note of that in the minutes? Right here. Absolutely. I'm sorry, on the ridiculousness.
It does, it takes a long time.
It does.
And VDOT
This
does
is
have.
like
some-
building a house.
Yeah, oh, it's complex. There are some VDOT requirements that are VDOT's requirements, and VDOT can waive those requirements. There are some like the ASHTO and the ADA and the PROAG that are, every DOT has to
I
comply with.
understand Ashton well. I got
The
it.
key is to set yourself up for success, and that's why it's been great working with Zoe and Bruce and Kat and
But we've
Ben.
not seen success out of them.
It's coming. It's coming. You have to set yourself up for success when you pick a spot, and there's some must opportunity.
Spots, spots for 8 years, Alan, and I'm not, this is not personal about you.
I know.
And I will say to the group, Alan knows Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville very well.
Yeah.
You used to be one of the resident engineers in this area, so I've known Alan for a long time. He's not gonna get offended at me yelling at him right now, I don't
Bill,
think.
I
But
appreciate it.
we have identified spots, and we knew those spots 8 or 9 years ago. So it can't wait on, it's not waiting on identified spots, we've got those.
No, it's just making sure that we codify your process. So that once we get rolling, we can actually get some momentum. I think part of what I would like this whole group to understand is, even in the city, we had to put our process in place. There was nothing on paper, because we really hadn't done any stops in years. It's been 15, 16 years since we just.
I mean, how long did that process for Belmont Park take? It was-
Yes, it took
it
almost
took
2
time.
years for the Belmont. But you are closer than you
Well,
were.
I'm closer than 8 years, all right.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like the way the city is thinking, because they're short-term and long-term. What can we do that's ADA compliant in the short term to create a stop quickly and get people on the bus? And it might not be the perfect scenario, they might not have a shelter yet, but it's on VDOT right away. What is a minimalist approach with least cost to get a rider out of the mud the fastest that VDOT will approve? And that's the path that we've gone down. Haven't made a lot of headway, and I was kind of hoping Chuck Proctor would be here tonight. But we still need to work through that with VDOT, because they're gonna have to get outside of their box to approve that.
Yes.
They are. It, plain and simple. And we're gonna try to do everything we can to get them to think outside of the box. This is an interim solution that's ADA compliant, that gets folks out of the mud and onto the bus in the short term. And then meanwhile, we'll plan, develop cost estimates for every stop to give you a platinum or at least a gold plated nice stop, and see where we can go. Cost estimates, DRPT program that'll pay for it. Come into Katie, let them do their money magic, get you the funding. Next July 1, you begin, you design it, get it approved and build it. And the great thing about that with a phase 1 and phase 2 approach is VDOT's already approved the stop. Stop's already there. You're just improving it, so it'll condense the time frame. But we need you not to push up daisies anytime soon. We need you to keep pushing, because I'm gonna need your help to facilitate some of
Okay,
that.
so we have another year, according to the General Assembly bill,
You're gonna have stops. You're gonna have
that, and we have to get it moving within this year, or we're gonna lose even this process. I'm just saying.
You're gonna have stops. I'm going on record and say we're gonna have some stops, one way or the other.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I just also,
Yes.
Alan, also adding my thanks to the work to try to streamline the process to get bus shelters. The Charlottesville Area Alliance is a group of the city, Albemarle, and several nonprofits and for-profits working for a more age-friendly community, and public infrastructure is one of the biggest barriers to being an age-friendly community. And when we hear from older adults, the bigger barriers, even than routes and headways, which are challenging. But it's just simply, there's not a bus shelter.
Yeah.
Not just people standing in the heat and the mud. I cannot go to that shelter because there's nowhere for me to sit down.
Yeah.
Or it's 110 degrees and there's not a shade tree there, so I just cannot use that. So older adults or other people who do not drive, they just don't use the cab at all. And it is a biggest barrier to causing isolation, which is the public health crisis. So I want to amplify that, of how much of a barrier is to public health. And I know we're running a little over, so I'm not going to ask you to respond to this. And I've heard you amplify the complexities and how many challenges there are to get a shelter and ADA compliance. ADA is sometimes minimalist. as far as age-friendly components. I did notice one of your slides looked like it did show a nice shade tree over a shelter. If there's not shade in a bus shelter, you're creating a greenhouse, which nobody can stay in the heat of Charlottesville. So I encourage you to be mindful that ADA is not always everything it needs to be when we're thinking about age-friendly. So again, no need to reply right now, just a add comment we have here. Thank
And
you
if
for your
you
efforts.
they gave us in Albemarle County, and a few of the poles were plastic seats that I wouldn't dare sit on in the summertime.
Yeah, it's hot. Thank you.
You could barbecue your lettuce, yes, exactly.
It's good to see you again. I met with Phil about 4 years ago.
We've been around, it's a small town.
Well, Alan, thank you, and I'm sorry for my energy about it, but.
No, I applaud it.
I'm pushing 8, 9 years here on this project, these projects, and what I just heard sounded like another 8 years.
No, less than a year.
We'll get it quick.
I
And it's, your energy helps. Delegate McQuinn's energy only helps, so we're grateful.
Bethel, thank you very much if you're still there. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Alan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for helping. She's the smart one, so.
All
All
right,
right, thank you all.
I'm gonna take a deep breath and try and calm down and turn to Taylor for our update on the Regional Transit Authority working group.
Yes, so we, in addition to the Regional Transit Partnership transition work that we've been doing, we've also done a lot of work on the transit prioritization study. So you all saw the final version of that scope of work at your last meeting. Since then, the scope has gone out to DRPT's transit planning bench, and we received 4 proposals back from RK&K, Michael Baker, AECOM, and Kimley Horn. We have reviewed all of those. Working group members and also transit agency partners all participated in that evaluation of those proposals, and we've notified everyone of our intent to award RK&K. So right now we're just working through final negotiations, making sure everything's right, like we're looking for in the final proposal that we've gotten from them, and hopefully we're going to sign notice to proceed soon for that. But I'll turn to you all. Anything else, working group members?
That's the big news, yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to get started on our big study.
Awesome.
Any other questions about that? Sounds good.
Awesome.
All right, transit provider updates, and this is all, again, the part you folks really like. So, first up, Albemarle County Schools Jam. How do you want to start?
Yeah, well, it's National School Bus Safety Week this week, so we have a couple of things that we have to do for the state. We put out like a lot of communications, we had a big celebration today, so just for your awareness. And I had a briefing this morning from Ultimate, which is the company we partner with, and ACPD on our school bus stop arms and also the speed zone camera. And I'll just give you a couple of data. So it's kind of a long process, and there's a lot of rejections from the video cameras. But in September, they issued 380 actual violations, which is by Albemarle High School, Buckeye Giles Road intersection, that covers Greer, Zerny, and Albemarle. And then Western Albemarle, Brownsville, Henley out there in Rockfish Gap. And there were 783 warnings because we were giving everybody the 30-day grace period, which had started in August. So that covered part of September too. So 783 warnings, 380 actual violations issued. And then we had the same time period for our school bus stop arm cameras. We have 4 right now, but
So go back a minute, just so everybody understands. Those are violations of people ignoring a stopped bus with children.
those are speed cameras.
Oh, voting
Around
cameras. See, I was confused. Okay,
Yes,
speed
no,
cameras.
these are much lower. So we had a lot of technical difficulties with the school bus stop arm cameras, and they had a longer warning period. So we only had 2 of our buses in September that were running,
Oh,
and they were close to Albemarle. They only issued 2 warnings and 3 citations.
okay, so that makes me.
But we'll see what the numbers are. Now we have 4 in October, 4 buses that are working and kind of worked out the kinks. And Ultimate said there's 600 pending with the police, which I think is a combination of all of the events. So we're still working through kind of that process and how much capacity the police really have to review all this, because they have to review.
Yeah.
So, but just wanted to share that. I think there was a question last month.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as you get more buses with cameras over time, you know, even on my morning commute just yesterday on Rio East. I was stopped behind a bus, you know, how it's 2 lanes going in each direction. All of the traffic coming forward was still going past that red light, and that, I was so impressed with that bus driver laying on their horn for every single one that went by, saying, you are ignoring this stop sign. But I was thinking of how many different citations it would have been.
She got hit to the track. Which your PA will put up, so not shooting it. For stop. Wow. This school bus with the red lights out. Wow. It was on profit and took the stop arm off. And the ACPD did get him and issued a misdemeanor for passing it.
Good, good. I do think that in all fairness,
Happens every day, right?
I think drivers sometimes are confused with our 4-lane roads and our roads that have. They shouldn't show, but I think they sometimes are because some of our roads have a median. And that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And I think advertisements or public service announcements or something to remind people when there's not a median, right?
Next time, get in the left lane and just
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah, we tried to do that this
It was
month
something.
because it's school bus safety month and we typically do that before school starts.
Yeah.
Do the kids still get rounded up onto the video buses and watch the scary movies about bus safety, or is that something that only millennials are traumatized with? This bus came to school, elementary school, and it had no seats in it, and it would pull down all the curtains, everyone sat on the floor, they would pull down a screen and project just terrifying films about kids getting hit by buses.
By buses.
Yes.
Learn about like the perimeter to walk, where to go, and like I vividly remember like Sally didn't make it to the dance that weekend.
Oh, wow.
Like it was.
Cars at high school before fall.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
So I'm guessing they don't do that.
I don't remember being a traveling, we don't like in gym, I think, watching some videos about getting hit.
We do have a video. I don't think it's scary. We do have a video that we give to our principals and we work with them to show all of that stuff. But no.
That's-
It is
I'm
safe
still
for
like, I'm clearing a bus with like a 20-foot radius.
Seems like it was
Safe work.
Just gave us nightmares.
I mean, we've come a long way in 2025 apparently.
Well, thank you for sharing the data, as scary as it is.
So if, I'm sure that will change, so I can keep you posted, I know you'll be.
Okay.
Can you say what your fleet size is, so we know 3 or 4 buses in relationship to where you'll be Monday?
We have about 160 buses out on.
Just one. Oh.
And 4 have the.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Jamie, that's it. That's your update. Scary as it was, that's your update. Okay, Peter. Oh. Sorry, I was going down the line. Scott, you're next.
Oh, well, I have nothing quite as exciting as that. Semesters continue. We just had fall break, fall reading days last week. We are operating, things are going well from let me see what's new. We were both units of my department were at various conferences last week, comparing ourselves to our peers around the state and nation. That's always fun, for both transit and parking. Transit was, the Campus Parking and Transportation Association meeting in Texas last week, which was it's always interesting for us to talk to other universities that drive buses and have students, how they manage their problems. We are continuing to get our battery electric buses ready for the roads. They have pretty much all of the equipment that they need now, all of the cameras, all of the sensors, transload equipment for tracking. We have done our first round of training, so now the trainers will be training the drivers. We have a little bit more equipment to onboard 100%, but I will still stick with by the end of this semester, we should hopefully see at least one of our 4 buses out riding on a route. So we have not really driven them much yet because of all the processes to get them commissioned.
Is it gonna look different? Like, will people know like that's the one?
Yes, because they're taller.
Oh.
Yes, they're noticeably taller. They've got four of the batteries are on the roof, so they've got, otherwise they look fairly similar. They're also. Our other electric buses are still white. If you've seen them, they're still out on the roads white. These are solid blue, so look for that nice UVA blue. I'm not sure when they'll get wrapped, but there'll be a nice big solid blue bus coming. So that we're excited about that. But like I said, hopefully before our next meeting, we'll have them on the roads. I think honestly that's about all that I have, unless people have questions for me.
Any questions? You put your buildings in a garage or two, aren't you?
We opened a parking garage September 10th. Out of Fontaine Research Park. I guess there's a UTS update. We're not ready for that yet because of the street network is being reconfigured at Fontaine Research Park. We just opened the roundabout on Friday, but there's other improvements, including a bus. That has to be in place.
Will it have a shelter?
It'll have 2 shelters.
Lucky you, could you help us?
I'd love to try.
Hey, Scott, that's in the county, right?
That is like.
Don't ever, I think it's ready.
So, yeah, so the garage opened, but one of the things that will happen with that garage, we will be, running a new, transit line, purple line, will start probably within the next month or so to connect Fontaine Research Park to the medical center. So those are the folks who are currently parking in the M90 garage. You all see all the construction going on there. That garage will transition to more, I'll call it local uses there as that Ivy corridor redevelops with the Carter Institute of Democracy. The hotel, Virginia Guest House will be opening sometime in the spring. School of Data Science is already open on site, that they're going to be building another building. So that garage becomes for those users. So the commuters that are in that garage are the ones that will be moving to Fontaine. And for the first time, UTS will be doing direct service between Fontaine Research Park and the medical center. There's been a university health system shuttle bus riding for years that's really targeted more towards patients. It's the smaller body on chassis vehicles, but UTS will be transporting back and forth. We don't yet have a date, but I would say within a month or so.
And there's a garage coming in over there, JPJ?
Yes, and and they go up very, very quickly. I don't want to turn this into a parking meeting, but yeah, precast parking garages go up quickly. It'll take another 7, 8, 9 months for the elevators to be installed, the fire protection system, all the other equipments. But steering it back to transit, that will be a major transit stop for anyone parking in JPJ and going elsewhere on ground. So it's being built with enough room for 4 buses to lay over. Covered canopy benches, not really shelter, but covered canopy the whole way. Of course, ADA accessible, its own entrance and exit lane for buses. So what you're seeing between what you might see on Massey Road and the garage as it's coming up, it will be sort of what we're calling an event lawn, which we'll use for major things going on in the athletic precinct. But the buses will pull right in front there.
So that parking garage by JPJ would be for people that are accessing your UTS.
UTS.
It's not just JPJ.
Not just JPJ.
What about the new building that they're building, or the SCPS building that's going in down by Barrett? The federal building that you gave out?
Sycamore Hill.
They didn't verify you got to expand transportation now?
We are discussing the need, so yeah, so the first users of that next semester will be those ROTC units and SDPS, the School of Continuing Professional Studies. But it'll be, I'll say, it's still, I don't know, we're still working on the programming, so.
I'm just surprised, I did ROTC at UVA and I would not check. I think it's very, very interesting that they are expect these people to do that. So they also do.
They received.
Oh, I did, yeah.
It was good. I think it's time for a nice one.
Are you all contemplating an all solar on your bus shelters?
Our bus
Oh, well,
shelters.
the not shelters, the
Canopy.
well, the
Parking garage.
Yeah, and some, but maybe bus shelters too, because I have been in other states and seen solar on bus shelters as well, to run lights and things like that, so I guess I'm just
Yeah, I think for us, for my department at least, the most logical place for us to put them would be, we're going to be renovating, this another update, that's. I know I said this before, we're going to be renovating our headquarters there on Millmont. And I've asked for us to incorporate solar panels in
Right.
that, at least the planning for them and the costing for them, don't have the numbers yet.
Yeah.
But for the parking garages, Fontaine, the one that is open now, is built for structural strength and electrical capacity. Should we at some point in time put up the frames that would then put up the panels?
So you could.
But the quick answer, I'm no solar engineer, but the quick answer I'm hearing from our team is that they'd rather put panels on buildings,
Yeah,
than building a roof on a parking garage.
yeah.
But I'm with you, I've seen shelters and parking lots.
In other states and other places, yeah. Interesting. Okay, any other questions? Then I will move on to Garland, city schools and CAP.
All right, city school side first. We're getting really close to taking possession of our first 2 electric buses. They will probably be delivered the week of the 10th through the 14th. It is tentative that we will have a ribbon cutting. Hopefully our infrastructure will be in place by the 17th. That's the tentative date right now. If not, then there's an alternative date the week after. Assuming that Dominion government they're supposed to do, then we will have power to our chargers and everything. With a lot of us have started out testing our battery electric squeezing. 2 right now, we're in discussions right now with the city schools about potentially adding 2 more next year. So that's part of the budget discussions that are happening right now. But that is kind of the magnitude of their pilot. It's 4 school buses, and then we'll figure out how it works in our model. But eventually, assuming that discretionary funding will return or is available to us, or if it's not going to return in the next 2 to 3 years, then it will be year 4, and then we will start our process all over again. Transitioning on the transit side, we actually myself and Michael Newbill, my assistant director of maintenance and facilities, went out to Gillick with our walkthrough for our electric office. They go online in April. Yes, April, and then we're supposed to get them late May, early June. Our first 2. So that was, we have to do so far out, so we can make sure we keep our place in, just factory, how we do the process. I spent a whole lot of time talking about it, but it is wild to see how they do everything. You will notice, we are working on a design for the wraps that will be on these buses. Like Scott said, they are bigger, but you will see them because the coloring scheme that we're going to put on them, you will know that these are better than the things. And they will be wrapped before they get there. So we will take care of that process. We're also in discussion between the city and the county about potential enhancements of service for next year to make reliability better and actually increase frequency on certain routes. Those conversations they've been outstanding, I guess I would say at this point in time, because everybody's been talking about, possibility of making some of these things happen. But we know we're gonna make some changes immediately, which is like the UVA extension that we talked about near Walmart. And we're working to make sure that we can implement the 2A, 2B change. So that's what we're talking about in 6 months. You will see that, and we'll get out there bus stops to make that happen. And then we are also working with DRPT to potentially look at going after a smart scale grant application. We are targeted possibility of going after. We got 2 major projects that we've been working through. One of them is updating our maintenance facility to be able to take care of alternative fuel vehicles. So that's priority one. Priority two is also, we're running out of space for our administrative building, but also we don't have training. Our training facilities are not where they need to be, so that would be the impetus for us to kind of move that as a second project for Smart Scale. But if we don't get, we apply for a discretionary grant with the no low. If we don't get that, then we're gonna take opportunity to use Smart Scale to facility fund the maintenance. If we get the no low, then we will take an opportunity to get the administrative facility as a part of an application. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch. The day it starts with the state. So 2 weeks, but I think it's next week, it's the 29th. 29th, correct. So 29th, and then we'll see what happens after that. But I'm hopeful that I think we had a great application for the no-low grant. I think it was rock solid. I'm very hopeful that we're going to be able to get it. And if the government wasn't low, we probably would have heard by now. But that's normally when it happens around this time of the year. But we'll see what happens. So.
Any questions for Garland? I have one quick one for you. Where do you all stand? Where does CAT stand on the work that has been done with hydrogen fuel cells and that proposal? Because I read somewhere that somewhere in Virginia, they're going to be producing hydrogen fuel cells.
That's great. So because that's part of the discussion that we're gonna be having with the city council in our budget discussions that start on November the 5th. Because they have to give us direction. Right now, we still are working under their adopted plan, which gave us to move forward with the battery electric first, and then the hydrogen in order 27, received 28, early 29. So we're still working under that assumption. If they change that, because discretionary funding is a big part of making that model happen, because these buses are really expensive.
Right.
Hydrogen is $1.6 million for every one single bus.
Yeah.
That's this year. I don't know what it'll be next year. So it's pretty close to 1.8 probably next year. It's been amazing how quickly these things have gone up. I'm assuming that we're gonna get direction, maybe not kill it, but potentially delay it. And if that happens, then that shifts our model. But the battery electric model is already out, that's out the gate. That ship is already sailed.
But going back to Champaign Urbana and our work around hydrogen fuel cells, right?
Yeah.
And I was interested to see that in Virginia, their production of hydrogen fuel cells is going to be happening, which means that we don't have to truck them all the way across country, but they're right here in Virginia.
I think that helps the situation, but it's still who pays for the infrastructure? It's expensive. Even the storage facilities are $2-3 million just for storage. And we still have to have a maintenance facility that allows us to work on it. So everything is geared around making sure the maintenance facility is adequate. So we can actually move to the transition to doing more battery electric and then potentially doing the hydrogen.
Oh, look at it this way, we have an authority coming along with what you want. So there we go.
We got some money, we can make some things happen. Money is a lot of things happen.
Okay, no more questions for Garland. Then Mike, you want to do the JAUNT? It is the JAUNT thing.
JAUNT turned 50 since we were last here.
Yeah, happy birthday. Party if we were alive.
So we're kind of acknowledging that over the next year. We do have a special landing area on our website where we're encouraging people from the public and riders and community members to share their JAUNT stories over this next year. We've been working with a communications firm for a period of time. They've presented our kind of communication strategy and design to the board. And work is really moving along on some branding, marks, colors, etc. That will get an interim update to the board in either December or February. Garland didn't say, but all transit agencies right now are experiencing the joy of NTD reporting season, which is sometimes more taxing than others, depending on whether they throw errors that don't make any sense. And it is a little bit challenging with contacting our federal government partners right now. So we'll see how it goes in the end. We are ahead of where we've been in the last 2 years. So fingers crossed. And for us, city budgets have started to be due. County budget for us is due November. We submit a total of, I think, 9 budgets at JAUNT. So that's a good time.
Two down.
Sunday, we will be in Stonefield with a jaunted bus for the Boo Through event. In the afternoon, handing out candy and talking about JAUNT. So if you're out shopping in Albemarle County, stop on by for your Reese's cup and a JAUNT sticker. I will be presenting to the city council about JAUNT services, particularly with the ADA at their November 17th work session. And so I know some of our partners here will be tuned in for that. And participating. And I know that Garland and I, and maybe if I talk to Scott afterwards, will be talking to a group of young transit leaders from around the state who will be a part of the Virginia Transit Leadership Institute. They change sites each month. Last year, when they came to our region, they were trained at CAP. This year, they'll be trained at JAUNT, and Garland and I both have separate sessions. I have an idea for the 3 of us. It might be fun. Scott. Yeah. We have in this year money for a demonstration grant where I can say that I received finally the I believe is the final copy of a contract with us and a software vendor that is known in the area that's going to allow us to pilot the on-demand concept in a rural jurisdiction in a way that is a little bit different than some places in the state. We will turn that service on for all of Greene County. And we will also, from a scheduling perspective, in order to optimize where we are from the ancient software that JAUNT has, be turning all of our scheduling in the ADA footprint without turning on the app for the pilot purposes. So that's going to be a really exciting time that I believe will initiate in February. And we are participating with, I don't even know how many, 8 or 9 public agencies who were all awarded funds this year from DRPT to procure new scheduling software. And so part of a consortium approach there where we at least intend from the outset to issue a really strong RFP award to up to 3 software vendors in a way with cooperative language that any transit agency that follows in the next 5 years will be able to just plug in and use that contract. So that's an exciting process. And so I've got 3 people on that group, and it's being led right now by the folks out at Greater Lynchburg.
Any questions for Mike? No, Katie, you're next.
We are wrapping up procurement for the high water current service. That's the East West Virginia Bridge service that will be the roads in Harrisonburg, stopping in the Charlottesville area. They're very close to having an actual launch timeframe. And so then once the operator is secured, they'll have a better idea of getting when the timing of the stops will be. So excited for 2026 launch, and they'll have more information coming soon on that. November 5th through 6th will be our sub-recipient workshop and procurement training. On November 19th is the transit program grant workshops. That's when we go through all of our funding programs as the grant cycle is about to open in December. The big one is the merit review that's ongoing. The 45-day public comment period
for the proposed merit capital and operating changes is open. It closes on November 21st. Any comment should be sent to the DRPT PR email. And all of that information can be found on our website. We're hosting a webinar on the 12th at 1 to review these proposed changes and answer any questions. The TISDAC meeting will be on the 24th of November at 9:30 a.m. to review the public comments and potentially vote on the endorsement of the proposed changes. But if these ultimately get passed by the CTV, they won't be implemented until fiscal year 28. But it's unclear whether this will still go to the CTV if TISDAC votes no.
Okay.
And as it stands now, is not chock full of good news for our region, as JAUNT would lose about 11%.
And that public comment period, we're pushing out through email to all of you all and also through our social media to see if we can get as much engagement as possible.
John, if I don't know what lose money. That will lose money too.
Yeah.
Can't remember, it's low end 600,000, higher than.
Yeah, they're not small.
Right.
Just wow.
Any
So I
other,
definitely recommend getting any public comments that you have and tuning into all the meetings that are.
okay, any other questions for Katie?
I have a question. Katie, do y'all have a time for the grant workshop yet?
Yes, on the 19th,
Mm-hmm.
it is 11 a.m.
Thank you.
I will just add that I was with about 100+ students from our Washington Public Schools today out at North Fork. Around an environmental summit. And one of the topics that kept coming up among those students was, we don't have the right kind of transit, we don't have a robust transit system, we want to be able to ride transit. And it's not provided in this community, which I took as good news that they're interested and they're recognizing. So.
Change makers.
Trying to get to high school?
These were high school students from Albemarle Public Schools, variety of, from different schools. It was about 100, I don't know, 150 kids.
So they were training?
They were talking environmental issues, and one of their concerns was that they didn't have a good bus service in Albemarle County. Not school bus, but.
Did they mention how much they'd be
transit.
willing to pay in fare?
Students, no.
But we've had that discussion about fares before. So, anyway, that is it for our provider updates. And I guess the next item, and I think we're pretty much on time, which is really good. The next item, under other business updates and reminders, you all are aware that often in November and December, we reduce a meeting and just have one meeting because of the holidays and the schedules. And when we had our pre-agenda meeting recently, it occurred to us that in skinning down the meetings for Thanksgiving and Christmas, it would be a good idea perhaps to suggest that we have a joint RTP and CARTA meeting in November. And one of the leads for this is because Christine, I understand you all are gonna get some renovations in December, which is really good.
In the October meeting of the commission, they approved a scope of work for tenant improvements for both the office side and the meeting side of the building. So we will have some logistics to work through with all of our public bodies, either meeting virtually or in other spaces. So if this were to work out, perhaps we wouldn't have to consider
Yeah,
something. For
That's
December.
exactly right. So it seems to make sense, given the renovation in December and the end, and this room is not gonna be accessible, that we would just have a joint RTP and CARTA meeting. We were suggesting Tuesday, November the 18th, which is a little different. It's a Tuesday. So it changes a little bit, but it's Tuesday, November the 18th from 5 to 6:30. And it will be the last partnership meeting. So we'll have a celebration. We can,
Come up with secret handshakes.
there we go, trying to figure out some kind of a fancy dance.
What's the time?
But so we said 5 to 6:30. So that would be November the 18th, which is a Tuesday, 5 to 6:30. And it would be the CARTA group as well as the RTP.
replacing the December.
Yes. So no December meeting for either, right? And it does simplify the holiday schedule to some degree, and this allows you guys to have your, and we don't want you to be out there struggling to find a place to meet in December because of the renovations, that seems kind of awkward, so. I would need, if there are no questions or concerns about that, this is a item for a vote. So I would love to have someone make a motion and a second, and we could solidify this date. If that works.
So.
All right, so we have a motion to move the November and December meetings to November 18th from 5 to 6:30 for both RTP and CARTA. So we have a motion and a second. And Lucinda, would you call the vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Supervisor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Oshrin,
Yes.
Supervisor Miller, sorry, Director, Miss Miller,
Yes.
Director Parker,
Yes.
Director Pilipowski,
Yes.
Supervisor Pruitt,
Aye.
and Director Silsdorf.
Yes.
All right. So hearing no objections, I'm going to adjourn us to Tuesday, November the 18th at 5 o'clock in this room for a celebration. Thank you very much. You guys have a nice evening.
I always hard when I feel like I'm gonna talk to like 5 people, but you do that, people start.
How it goes.